Hey, what's up guys, Garrett here. Welcome back to another video. In this one, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're not going to be going over any code or anything like that. And the reason for that is because, well, I don't have any code to show you. For the last week or so, I've been going over my project and trying to get organized and create the structure and process and DevOps stuff and business stuff, marketing, all that fun stuff to really kind of clean up the foundation that I've set and really just make sure that I'm headed in the right direction. And this is something that I like to do every month or so to make sure that everything stays organized, everything stays clean, not messy, tidy, right? And that I keep moving in the right direction. So I thought because of that, because I don't really have any code to show you guys, and because I've been doing all that stuff, I thought maybe it'd be cool to show you guys the stack that I use, not just from a coding and development perspective, but the entire thing. What are all of the apps and services and stuff that I use to make my projects work, to make my development work, to make everything kind of run smoothly, even my life to a certain extent. Everything should run smoothly and work together and all that fun stuff. Fun fact, I spent 30 minutes recording this video, only to then realize when I started editing it that I recorded the wrong screen. So here we are, take two. The first app that I use is VS Code. You've probably heard of it. You've definitely seen me use it. That's basically my editor of choice. I've thought about trying to learn Vim, which is an in the command line editor, but I don't know. I mean, VS Code kind of does everything I need it to, and it does it pretty well, so why bother, I guess. But yeah, VS Code is a very, very popular coding editor. I used to use one called Coda, like way back in the day, and then switched to VS Code a few years ago, and I've been loving it ever since. It's very popular. I know people that use WebStorm. They really like that too, so that's another option, although I believe you have to pay for it. If that doesn't bother you, check that out. But if you want a free option, VS Code is a great way to go. Next, for all of my API development, which is basically half of what I do, I guess, because my backend is all like API stuff, right? I use Postman, and Postman is awesome because after you've written the code, you need to test out the code. So Postman basically allows you to create these requests and hit the actual endpoint and basically see what happens and see if you get any errors and see what the errors are. And you can also specify what the body of the request should look like and the headers or the parameters or all that stuff. So you don't have to just go into a browser and try it out. You can go into Postman and kind of play around with it in a more developer friendly, more revealing, I guess, way, if you want to consider it that, way of seeing things. So highly recommend that. Apparently 10 million developers use Postman. It is free. You can pay for it, but it is free. The free version will be plenty. So I highly recommend checking that out. The next thing that I use is the iOS simulator. This is kind of love-hate. It's great. It does what it does very well. The only problem is that because it is simulating an iOS device, it basically makes my computer fans spin up a lot and makes things kind of work very hard, which is annoying to me because the fans get very loud on my MacBook Pro. But it is what it is, I guess. I've noticed that like whenever I'm doing Flutter stuff specifically, even sometimes if I don't have the simulator open, the fans still go pretty loud. Whereas if I'm doing just JavaScript stuff, I don't really have a problem doing anything. But what it is what it is. So the simulator is pretty great. If you don't have an iPhone, or if you only have one type of iPhone, like I only have one phone. I don't know why I would have multiple phones unless I don't have a company phone. So there's that. But yeah, the simulator is pretty great if you want to test on different devices. So something that you should look into getting if you consider doing that. The next thing that I use is Firebase. You might have heard of Firebase. It's essentially a backend as a service platform. It basically is your entire backend for doing apps and web apps. If you're doing stuff that really just requires server stuff, then Firebase probably won't really be the best choice for you. But they have a lot of awesome tools in here that can really, really do a great job of helping you get your app, number one, off the ground, number two, working, and number three, growing. So they have apps for developer stuff, or not apps, they have tools for developer stuff such as Cloud Functions, which I use heavily. Hosting, which is, oops, I did not mean to do that. Hosting, which the Circle website actually uses. Circle is the app that I'm building. So the website actually uses Firebase hosting, and it works extremely well. This hosting is really, really fast. No complaints there, honestly. They have a lot of other stuff too. They also have improve your app quality, so performance monitoring, crashing, stuff like that. And they also have stuff to help you grow your business, like in-app messaging or predictions or A/B testing, stuff like that. So highly recommend Firebase. It's a great abstraction away from the server so that you really just have to worry about the code and making things kind of work for your business and not necessarily the maintenance of having to get, anything working server-wise. And if you're an individual if you're a company, that'd be great. But if you're an individual developer like I am in the context of my app, this is invaluable. My database of choice is MongoDB. I chose MongoDB just because I prefer the syntax. I prefer the flexibility of a NoSQL database, and I prefer I just feel more comfortable with MongoDB than I do. Even though I have over a year experience of using SQL, I just feel a lot more comfortable with using MongoDB. And so, for me, I don't really see the drawbacks as being an issue thus far. Maybe one day I will, and then I'll have shot myself in the foot and have to figure out a solution. But at least for right now, I don't have any. I don't notice any of the drawbacks as being issues for me. This is their homepage, not what I was on before. MongoDB, however, has in the cloud, they have this service called Atlas, which is free to get started with, which basically is a fully managed, hosted by MongoDB instance of a MongoDB database, which you can use, just the way you would use a MongoDB database on your actual computer. The problem is that once you're done with the free tier, it steps up to, pretty affordable, $10 a month, something like that. But once you get past the first 2 or 3 maybe tiers of paying for things, it gets really expensive really fast, which is why I use MongoDB, but I will be using it in Compute Engine. Compute Engine is Google's just raw VM. You buy hardware and you can do whatever you want with it. So I have MongoDB in Atlas right now just because it was really easy to set up. But I will eventually be moving it to Compute Engine. If you're doing stuff with just, you need the raw backend servers, Compute Engine is what you want to look at least if you want to use GCP. If you want to use AWS, look at EC2, but I like GCP. So Compute Engine is what you want to look at there. So I'm going to be putting MongoDB on Compute Engine and then using that in place of MongoDB Atlas for my app. So the only downside is that I will have to manage optimize for performance. I will have to manage security, all these things. But hopefully it'll end up being a lot cheaper. Although I will have to put more work into it, I'll still be learning a lot, which is a really good thing to learn anyway. So it's cool. Next thing I use is Dart. This is the programming language that Flutter uses. One thing I find interesting is that Dart is a great language, but it's supposed to be like a kind of all-rounder language. Like you can do the server-side stuff and you can do the front-end stuff. So I kind of found it was annoying, or I kind of find it interesting that they focus so heavily on the front-end stuff on Dart's website. Maybe they wanted to replace JavaScript, which is primarily front-end. I don't know, but you can 100% do server-side code with Dart. So I kind of find that to be a little interesting that they put such a heavy, focus on the front end stuff. But either way. So Dart, which is the language that Flutter uses. Next thing I use is JavaScript. I use Node all the time. I actually use Node a lot at work, and Express, and so I use JavaScript because of that. But I use JavaScript also for all my Firebase stuff is all in JavaScript as well. Also, the website is in React, so it's in JavaScript too. Flutter, this is the framework that I use for all of my mobile app development stuff. You guys probably know that because all of my last, 10, 20 videos have been in Flutter. So there's that. But if you want to make, mobile apps or anything like that, highly recommend using Flutter. I think you can also make desktop apps now too. So highly recommend using Flutter. There is definitely a lot to learn. The learning curve is steeper than I would like it to be, but nevertheless, Flutter is highly capable and really, really good. If you want to learn more about Flutter, check out any of the last bunch of videos that I made, or subscribe to the channel so you can see all of the videos that I make, because a lot of them are on Flutter. And yeah, it's pretty awesome. The next thing that I use is React. I use React for all my web development stuff. So the website for Circle, my app that I showed you guys, a couple minutes ago, is built in React. And it's pretty great. I prefer React over Angular just because of how much lighter weight it is. I personally prefer that. Once upon a time, I actually preferred Angular, but now I don't. I prefer React. Next thing I use is Node. This is a great homepage Node, but Node is basically a way for you to use JavaScript on a server, on a computer, and not in the browser. I use Node all the time. There's a good chance that you use Node if you do JavaScript stuff and you don't even realize it. But yeah, Node is pretty great. Next thing I use is Express. Express is just a layer that sits on top of Node, and it basically provides an easier, simpler way of building Node or web apps without having to know all the nitty-gritty stuff of Node. One of the biggest things that it's used for is creating APIs. That's what I use it for at my job, my day job, and as well here working on my side projects. So Express is pretty awesome. We can maybe do some videos on Express too, actually. If you guys are interested, let me know down in the comments which things of these stuff you'd be interested in seeing videos on. I can start making some videos on those things. I would love to do that. I actually think I might. The next thing I do is, this is like not really developer stuff, but the next thing that I use is called OneNote. You might have heard of it. It's a Microsoft Office product. It's actually free. OneNote is basically, if you've ever heard of Evernote, their note-taking organization applications. I highly recommend using OneNote to basically just document your life. Write down everything and anything. Write down things that you think you might want to remember. You can make to-do lists. I personally use it to plan my goals out for the next day. I use it if I'm taking a course and I'm learning something, if I'm reading a book, if I have an idea for a business idea or something like that. I use OneNote for literally anything and everything that I want to keep track of. There's a quote that I don't know who said it, and I don't actually remember the exact quote, but it goes something along the lines of, if you don't write it down, you've basically forgotten it. So if you want to remember stuff, don't rely on your head to remember it. Just write it down, and then you'll actually remember it. OneNote also, yeah, again, it's free. So there's really no excuse not to get it. You can get it for Mac, you can get it for iOS or Android, and you can get it for Windows, obviously, considering it's a Microsoft product. The next thing I want to talk about is Jira. You guys might be familiar with Jira because it's everywhere. It's made by a company called Atlassian right here. And basically it is a project development management software, if that makes sense. It basically allows you to track how things are coming along. It allows you to keep track of tasks, to-dos that have to happen in order for a project to be completed. It allows you to track the status of those things, to keep track of what exactly they are and how they're supposed to work and how things are related and all this stuff. I use it. It's very awesome. It's used by a lot of really big companies. My old job used it. My current job used it. It's used by a lot of really big companies to do project management stuff and track things. But I think from a developer's perspective, instead of having an app like OneNote or a Google Doc and writing down all of the to-do items that you have to do, something like Jira is really, really helpful because it allows you to kind of plan out exactly when things should happen, the order in which things should happen, how things are related to one another, and the status as well. So if it's to do versus in progress versus in review versus done, it's very valuable to know that, especially if you're working with other people, but I think also if you're working by yourself, because it can get very overwhelming. And this was one of the things that I've been working on, was like kind of straightening up my Jira boards to not get overwhelmed with things that have to get done. And most importantly, perhaps for individual people out there, Jira is free. So I don't think a lot of people know this, but Jira is free up to the first 10 users. So if you're a small business or a startup or just an individual developer like myself, I highly recommend checking out Jira and maybe taking it for a spin, seeing if it can help you out. The next thing in the same vein as Jira, made by the same company, Atlassian, is Confluence. Confluence is basically a documentation place. It's a place to write down your notes. You could use OneNote in place of it if you are an individual developer, but I personally like to keep those two things separate. I want to keep the stuff from my app and my projects that I'm actually working on, that I plan on making businesses, versus OneNote, which is more so my personal life. It might overlap and kind of grab some things to the business side stuff, but generally it's more so about me as an individual, Garrett Love, versus Confluence, which is going to be not anything having to do with me. It's just going to be about whatever project it is that I'm working on or business that I'm working on, something like that. So very important. Also free to use, which is pretty awesome. if you guys are interested in that. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know down in the comments if there's some other tool or app or whatever it is that you guys think I should check out and maybe use for myself, take for a spin. Otherwise, let me know also if there are anything that you would like me to make a video on, like maybe a series on Express, which I would actually like to do, or something of that nature. So let me know down in the comments below. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.